Hey, what's going on, y'all? We Call
Yeah.
Next is in the building. Part 2. We Call Next. We here, y'all. And
Yes.
we're just excited to be here. Part 2, episode 2. The first episode with myself, I'm Hollis Edwards, and Dr. Theo Williams. We really just tried to introduce ourselves to you and just kind of give you what we call our backstory. And this episode here, I'll let Theo kind of introduce it.
Yes. Thank you for that, Brother Hollis. So this episode is all about Hollis and I and our walks with Christ, our faith, and how it has impacted us. So this episode is called Pass the Rock, because Jesus is the rock, and we're going to talk about how we've been sharing our faith and how our faith has taken us all around the world and blessed us in so many ways. So, Brother Hollis, I want you to set us off for our viewing audience. Just briefly touch on how you came to know Christ, because we've already last week touched on the backstory, the basketball, and everything that came with that, the party, the girls, and all that stuff. And if we stop right then, that's only half the story.
Right.
So tell us about when you came to know Christ. What was that circumstance? What made you make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you phrase it like that, because if we would have been taken out of this world, that would have been, just half of our story, and there would have been no redemption to Christ, and if we didn't have that opportunity. So, for me, Theo, it was, I came to Christ while I was in undergrad. Now, like many people out there, I went to church when I was young in Michigan City. I would go with my auntie to one church on the west side. I would go to one church on Michigan Boulevard from time to time. But, I never really got into it. My mom didn't make me because she was forced to go herself. So she wanted me to kind of make my own decision. But I was always God-fearing. I was always what I like to call God-curious. I was always just, I was a praying person. I would, read the Bible from time to time. But I was not trying to step into anyone's church house on a consistent basis. And that just...
I feel you on that.
It just, it was just too much hypocrisy, too much fake stuff. And then the people that I knew that was going to church every week was wilding out worse than I ever thought about doing.
Exactly. See
none
them
of
in the
that.
club Monday through Saturday, but then at church on Sundays.
Yeah, with the same gear on, with the same clothes on.
Not the same gear.
With the same gear on. So, none of that attracted me to want to be part of a church, part of a ministry. It even went so far that I actually didn't even like Sundays. I did not like Sundays. Sundays was like my worst day of the week. Most of my TV shows were not on. And, it was just not. And then back, as we're getting older, even back then when we were younger, certain stores wasn't even open, because of the, I think they call it the blue laws or blue code or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And so, but I say all that to just give y'all a background, like many of you that are watching, I've had my opportunities to come to Christ, and it wasn't like I just grew up a church guy. It wasn't like I grew up, sold out for God. And no, I was doing what many people have done and was not interested. But when I got to undergrad, I went to a couple of different schools, as I kind of shared on the previous episode, due to different things with basketball. And when I met my future wife, my wife currently now, my girlfriend at the time.
Shout out to Sister Mary. Yeah.
Shout out to my wife, Mary, no doubt. She was into the church. She was going to church. I wanted a real relationship with God. I didn't want what the church was showing me. I wanted a real, authentic relationship with Christ. And I would just watch her, and she would go to church and things like that. And so I started going to church with her. And
So you figured it
then
was the easiest way to get with her, right? You're like, I like where she going at.
I wasn't doing it in a manipulative way. I wasn't trying to holler at her.
But, it was that natural attraction. So you figured, well, she going out, I might as well go too.
I might as well go too. No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. And there's a lot of truth to that, and always.
Oh, I know it is. That's how same with me.
Yeah. And so I always appreciated her for that, and for having her certain standards and morals and things. And so,
Real.
I started going, and I met a great church family, and these people were all about love. A couple of things threw me off. There were white and black and his Latino people at this ministry, so I had never been in a diverse ministry like that. Every church I had been to was all black. So anyway, so that kind of had me questioning what was going on in here. Is this some kind of cult? Is what's going on? I just wasn't sure. But they just offered me a lot of love, a lot of support. I was able to ask questions. Shout out to Sister Melanie. I know you saw the first episode. You're a good supporter, so you'll probably be watching this one as well. Her and her husband were amazing to me in my beginning stages of Christ, and I've often tried to mirror or imitate what they did for me, which was be patient. Hey, they had a football game. Maybe their son was playing football or something. I would come up there, and we would walk around the stadium, and I would be able to ask questions. The other thing...
That's what's up.
Yeah, and the other thing was my pastor at the time, he would come over to the house and pray with me. And he would take time out of his day just to pray with me and everything, a college student. And so those kind of things, it was authentic. They did a lot of events together. And so subsequently, it made going to church a little bit more attractive to me. And it became a extended family, like I know you and Sister Nicole do for a lot of the students, at Bethel. So it became a family to me. And so I gave my life over. I stopped doing everything that I was doing in the past. And it's been an amazing journey over 20 years since then. And it completely changed and transformed my life.
Wow. That's what's up.
But I will say this part too, just real quick. I must add, one of the things people think about is when they come to God, they think everything got to be going wrong. And yes, God is, salvation means rescue. So he absolutely can rescue you. But that was not my situation. I felt extremely popular. I was having a great life in my mind. I had some opportunities to go play pro ball at the time. My picture is all over campus. I mean, I'm setting some records. So I was on a high. It wasn't like I was low down and just, I need you now, Lord. I wanted him. And so I just wanted to share that because sometimes people, they wait till everything is just, they're down and out and everything is just going wrong, and then they try to come to God. But I'm telling you, you could come to God when things seem to be coming your way. He still, can help you and transform your life like he did for me. So I just want to add that.
Oh, I'm glad you made that distinction. Definitely, I'm glad you made that distinction. Because my story, in terms of how I came to know Christ, is sort of the opposite, at least in terms of what you just pointed out.
Yeah.
My life was not on a high. I was not riding high. I was the total opposite. But I will say, just to backtrack, growing up, similar story to you in terms of the cultural side of going to church. And I explained it to a lot of my friends today when they asked me, as far as my upbringing in the faith. I'm like, well, I'm not sure if it's a black thing across the board, but at least where we grew up,
right,
it was kind of almost understood from a cultural standpoint that you went to church.
Yeah, understood.
Doesn't necessarily mean that your lifestyle was any different. Like you say,
right.
Monday through Saturday, do dirt.
Yep.
Stay out as late as you want on Saturday night, but you better get up early to go to church on Sunday.
Absolutely.
And then you do it all over again.
Absolutely.
And as we get older, we start connecting the dots and be like, hold on, this person was getting with this person after church. when he said laying on hands, he was really laying on hands. When they
sure.
said praying, it was Prey. We were
Right,
praying on the ground.
right,
So all that
prayer,
stuff.
no doubt.
So we grew up around that, and so but it wasn't until like you in college is when I gave my life to Christ. But it wasn't necessary that I had a hunger and thirst and desire for Him. For me, it was I had hit rock bottom. As I shared in the last episode, tearing my ACL,
Right.
coming back, being out 14 months, playing a year, tearing my other ACL, being in a new college, dealing with racial issues, dealing with identity issues. And so I had hit rock bottom, was borderline depressed, and I remember a guy who to this day is considered my spiritual father, Reverend Courtney Richards, came to me and he was like, well, you think you came here for basketball.
Right.
Let me tell you why you really came, or let me tell you who you really are.
Yeah, that's what's up.
And really schooled me on the fact that there was more to life than basketball, and that the primary thing that I needed to get was Christ. And maybe pre-injury, I'm not 100% sure I would have received that, because
Right.
unlike you said your life had it going on, and you just desired something more.
I did.
If my life would have had it going on, especially in terms of basketball and all that stuff, I'm not sure if I ever would have gotten around to that, or at least not then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because basketball had been God. But the fact that I was injured, not able to play, identity crisis, that's when I was able to see my identity in Christ.
Right. Your true
Because
self.
I didn't have that.
Right.
And so I always tell people tearing my ACL, as difficult as it was and how it changed my life dramatically in terms of my career, if I could go back in time, and trust me, I've replayed this in my mind, if I could go back in time, I would not change it, because I'm not sure if I don't tear my ACL, my basketball career takes off, but I'm not sure if I ever become best friends with Ryan Fleming. Not sure if I ever get involved in racial reconciliation. Not sure if I ever get involved in spoken word. And I definitely wouldn't have ended out in Boston to go to seminary, where 3 days later I met my wife.
True that.
And so for me, God has a way of just working things out. And so I think it's important, as you already shared, that we let the people know everyone's story is different pre-Christ.
Right.
And
No
everyone's
doubt.
story is different in terms of how they come to Christ, and that's all good. So don't think, well, if my story doesn't line up like this, then it's not going to work for me. It's not going to happen for me. No, He's going to meet you where you're at.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
Hollis, I want to switch gears, because you and I can say this, outside of relatives, I have several relatives from Michigan City who I'm super close with, but far as non-biological relatives, I can honestly say there's no one from Michigan City that I am as close with today than you.
Same here. Same
And
here.
I attribute a lot of that for this kinship that we have because of our walks with Christ, because of our faith.
Yeah.
So
No doubt.
let's transition to the year 1999, 2000. You're already in Michigan City doing great things in the ministry, and then I come back and we reconnect. So first, give us a brief history about what were you doing in Michigan City at the time? I know you were still balling, giving people work, but you were also doing ministry. So let us know a little about that.
Yeah, definitely still giving them that work. So, but, really, man, just wanted to serve. And so, at that particular time, I was involved with a couple of ministries and really just trying to help that pastor, fulfill their individual vision that God had given them. So, one thing about me is I never got into ministry to give somebody a business card. I never, got into it for a title. I got into it to serve and to, expand God's kingdom here on earth. That was like my thing. I wanted to help any way I could. So,
Sure.
and it's no shame in my game. I was happy to clean up the bathrooms after ministry, after service. I was just so happy to be able to do that. And because I
And why
knew,
was that? I mean, where did you get that from? Is that something you picked up uh, from your family, from sports? Where did that come from? That willingness just to serve and get in where you fit in?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it comes from a couple of different areas. I think number one, sports obviously is related because we know in team sports, that everyone has a role on a team, and no one's role is necessarily more important. We talk about in basketball, be a star in your role. So for
Exactly.
me, I wanted to be the best janitor, for the church, and when I was the sound man, I wanted to be the best sound man for the ministry. I wanted to be a star in my role, but not for me, but to give God glory and to make sure that things went smooth far as the services and things. And so, I was doing that, helping out. By the time when you came back, I was just kind of, we were doing some things and just kind of getting going in that area. But for me, again, it was never about, hey, I want to preach or I want to do this or get my name on a marquee. It was just always about the work of the Lord because I felt that a lot of people knew me in Michigan City. And so I knew that, like myself, a lot of people were looking for the real and looking for people that were authentic with it. And so I felt, in a joking way, I used to laugh and say, well, y'all know God is real because look how he's changed me and look how
That's
quickly
real
he
talk.
did it.
Facts.
So that's what I used to always tell people. Like, I'm not ashamed of the way I used to be. This just speaks to the transformation power of what God can do. So
Exactly.
so that was always my thing, man. And so we was just doing those things, and then when you and I connected,
Yo, so
it
Hollis,
was
I don't
just
mean to interrupt you, but I'm curious when you talk about the difference that people saw in you, at least the difference you wanted them to see in you, break it down for the viewing audience, because I'm curious personally, in terms of what was that like when you first returned back home? Because the thing is, when we leave the crib with a certain reputation, a certain lifestyle, and we go somewhere and change, whether it's for the better, for the worse, whatever, when we come back and change, the crib doesn't know about that change.
right,
So
right,
soon as you touch down, your boys is like, what's going on? Hollis is on
Right.
and popping. The girls is like, what's going on? Hollis is on
Yeah,
and popping.
no doubt,
So what
no
was
doubt.
those conversations like in terms of, was there hesitancy on your end to let them know who you were now? Did you ease into it? Did you come right out? Tell us in terms of what was that like being thrust back into that environment now that you've changed so dramatically?
Yeah, it was, so one, I'll say it was, there was a time period where I wasn't operating with a ton of wisdom, and I just had
Okay.
and I had a lot of zeal. So when I came back, I was like this: if I was gonna be bold in the world, I'm gonna be bold for the Lord. So I was telling people about hell, and I'm riding my bike, passing tracks. People like, man, ain't you gonna be hooping later? I'm like, yeah, man, but what's up with this? I'm trying to help people, get to know the knowledge and have the knowledge and the experience that I had, and that was
Okay.
important to me, and it was real. And so, and one thing most people knew about me is that I was a real dude. I was never fake or phony. So I was bold, probably lacking some wisdom. I probably was a little too aggressive on some of my closer friends,
Beating people over the head.
beating them over the head. But I cared about my friends, and I was like, a slave that just learned how to read. It's like, wow, I got all this new information. I want to share it, right? And
Yeah,
and
I
so
feel that.
yeah, so that's kind of how it was, and it kind of turned off some of my closer friends, and we they kind of started taking a little bit more distance from me, which I understand that now as I'm older.
There's like, here come Hollis.
Yeah, here he come again. They like, man, this cool for you, man, but we don't want to hear all that, So, and then the other people kind of left me simply because I wasn't going, hanging out anymore. I wasn't trying to go to the club. I wasn't trying to hook up with different women. And actually, I still remember one young lady. I took my wife with me to go support a friend, and he was having some kind of get together, and I didn't want people to just think I kicked everybody to the curb. So my wife and I went, and this other young lady had came up to me at some point and was like, "So you back in town? So it's on? It's what they say? Once again, it's on." And I was like, "No, it's not."
I'm like, let me introduce you to my wife, Mary.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, no, that is not on. No, Eddie, I'm a different dude, you know. And so, and I think it threw people off a little bit because that it wasn't like it was a 20-year time difference where they saw me one way and then I came back different. It was a couple of years.
Yeah.
But God had just did such a quick work with me, and I was just sold out. So yeah, it was some loneliness there because you have to but I was okay with it because, you know, I understood that it was gonna probably be a little bit of a lonely road, but I just wanted to do as I used to say back then, I'm all about my Father's business, and that's what I used to always say back then. So
that's what's up.
How about you?
I remember when I got back in town, it was very similar. Before you and I hooked up, and even after we hooked up, I was working at the Hope program, and
we were there together for a minute.
Yeah, and the opportunities were endless in terms of if I really wanted to be about that life again. Because college degree, just graduated, full of confidence, full of life. The light of Christ is in me, and that was making me more attractive to some of the young ladies. They were seeing, especially a lot, keep it real, a lot of the ones who maybe didn't give as much play back in the day. They want to do some other stuff, but now they want to settle down.
Right, they want a good man now.
More mature, and I'm like, hey, I hope you find out who you're looking for, because I'm not
right.
And it was funny because part of my testimony is and I don't mind sharing this because anyone who knows me knows this is part of my testimony, was that I was practicing abstinence a couple years into college, and then when I got back to the crib. And I remember one time I was at this family gathering. I say family gathering, like younger family, like my cousins. We were all sitting around playing cards, playing spades, whatever. And somebody pulled out some weed. And I used to smoke weed back in the day. Was no longer smoking. And one of my cousins who I had been ministering to previously, or knew what I was about, was like, "Hey, don't even offer none to Theo. He don't smoke weed." And at that time, it made sense. I'm an athlete, so that's no big deal. I could just played it cool. But then unsolicited, out of nowhere, he was like, and on top of that, he ain't having sex either.
Oh snap!
And we
all out there.
Like there's a DJ playing some music. It's not a party like dancing. Just we all sitting around, but there's still music going. The music stopped. It was like, everyone look at me like
the proverbial music stopping.
Exactly. and I was at a crossroads, and without missing a beat, I was like, yeah, that's true. I'm not. And then the music started back. There was no one clowned me. No one was like blah blah. And in fact, there was a young lady who came up to me afterwards who said that she had just started practicing abstinence, and now she had more confidence that she could actually do it because someone like me was doing it. And then that same cousin, so this was early on, late 90s. Years later, is now a lot stronger in his walk with Christ and his faith, and we still talk about that, and he brings me back to that night. And he says he appreciates the fact that I didn't front. And anyone know me, it was like when I described to my wife in high school, I was a different character. I was cool enough to be in the in crowd, but I was also quirky in a lot of ways, to where I had my own little one man crowd, and where's how I dressed, my jokes. I really never cared about whether someone received me or not. And so for me, when I came to Christ, I had that same attitude, like, I'm going to do me. And you're either going to accept me or you're not. And so we had a similar story in terms when I got back to the city, people thought it was, once again, it's on.
Yeah.
And without me beating anyone on the head, I just kept it real. I'm like, I don't know where you at. I'm not going to self-impose where I'm at on you, but here's where I'm at. And if you respect me, if we're as cool as you think we are, you're going to honor that. And you'd be surprised how many people who didn't necessarily come to know Christ per se, but they never put me in any awkward positions. They always looked out for me. And I really appreciated that, especially long term.
Yeah.
And then you and I link back up.
Man.
So let's talk about that, because I know for me, that really helped me a lot in terms of, if I'm going to be back in the city, I can't go at this by myself. I can't be a lone ranger. I'm going to need someone to hold me down as far as accountability, someone who I can confide in, someone who gets it. So let's talk about that. What was it like for you? And we mentioned this in the last episode. Hollis is like a big brother to me in a lot of respects. So what was it like for you? And tell the stories. I want you to really tell the stories. When we first met, you seemed like you were kind of filling me out, like, is he really about that life? And we had a couple of disagreements in terms of what it meant to walk this thing out. So tell us a little about that.
No doubt. Just being transparent. I mean, and even though, you know, I look at you as my little brother. I mean, but we learn from each other. You know,
no doubt.
I want to make sure I always say that. I mean, he gives me counsel, and when I need him and things of that nature. So. But, you know, yes, I was in a ministry at that time, and I had come up in a ministry when I was in college that it's great ministry, but definitely was what you would consider a holiness church, sanctified church, quote unquote. You know, a ministry that maybe not so much in Michigan, but then when I came back to Indiana, the ministry we were a part of definitely had some rules and regulations on how you to dress, and maybe some of your lifestyle changes. And you know, we were going to church 3 times a week. And then when I see my guy, you come bouncing into town, and we vibing, right? We vibing. I'm like, yes, finally, cause you know, one of my homeboys from MC is like for real about the kingdom. Like I'm just like ecstatic, and then it's somebody who's one of my favorite people. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, this is awesome. You know, I'm just so excited. And you started coming. You would come and fellowship with us, and you know, I'm trying to get you to join. You like, man, I'm good, but I come fellowship. You know, and then you start telling me about Combustible. You start telling me about some of the spoken word and the music and things like that. And I'm like, yo, this brother, is he too loose? Is Theo too, you know, I like his freedom, but is he too free? Is he pushing the envelope? So I'm kind of giving you not the side eye, but I'm just out of concern. Yeah. I'm checking you up and down, right? Because I knew what you had was sincere, like mine. I knew that your stuff was authentic. A lot of people, we can go down a list of people that were involved in church when we came back. Oh, yeah, that's not what we connected with. We connected with people who were residing as kingdom citizens, people that were all about the kingdom and the things that are involved. You know, it's kind of like a franchise. I tell people, when you go to one McDonald's, you expect the next McDonald's to look similar, and so forth and so on. Excuse me. And it's the same thing when you see God's people. There's just something that you connect with. There's a similarity there. There's that DNA there, and so you and I, we were connected on that level. But I was concerned, and that was as I reflect back on that. Obviously,
and you expressed that concern to me.
I did. Okay, I can't remember that, but
yeah, about the story. Yeah, I'm saying, like, you know, man, I'm feeling this, but you know, be careful and this, and I'm like, dude, you know, you on some old. I was on some religious my shirt stuff. Up, and you know. I'm like, no, I'm walking free.
Hey, who the Son set free is free indeed, right?
No doubt.
You was walking in that thing, and I hadn't really seen that. So I'm just like, But I was in my religion, you know. We were, like I say, what I was, the church I was part of at the time, and that's no disrespect. That's the way they flowed, and I was there. You know, they didn't force me to be there. That's what I was a part of. So, but once I got out of there, you know, I was able to realize that a lot of the things that I was concerned about was just that you were breaking the mold from religion, and and when you're in religion, when someone's not doing those things, it almost seems a little weird or foreign, or you get a little
Antichrist.
concerned.
It seems almost like anti the guy. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And so that was a good experience for me, though, because for me, like my wife, she has a background of being involved in church when she was young and all these things. I do not. Like I'm just as unchurched as just it's just unbelievable when I came to Christ. And so that experience and that regimen and that discipline and that religious situation I was involved in was helpful.
Yeah,
Because
you probably needed that early on out there.
yes,
Yeah.
I did. I needed that structure, and it really helped me learn the word and get into it and read and study and all those things. I just didn't need the other stuff, the man-made stuff, and so I was able to get rid of that stuff and kind of, you know, shake the dust off and from those things when I was able to leave and go to a different ministry and actually walk in that freedom. So no, that's real though, bro. I was worried about you. I was concerned. I was concerned.
But that's good. I'm glad. I'm glad that we're talking about this particular subject, because we all know people today in our circle that one of the things that's probably keeping them personally from coming to Christ is because of what they've seen in terms of that religion, in terms of the hypocrisy, in terms of the church not getting it done, in terms of racial issues or dealing with real world issues, or being so restrictive. And it's important that life in Christ is a free. It's about liberty in Him.
Yes.
Not liberty in the world, but there's a liberty in Him, a freedom in Him, where if you kick it with me and Nicole, like we had the game night not too long ago, we all on the game night, these were all Christian couples. It was jokes from the moment we got on Zoom
Right.
to we trying to hang up. Everyone's still cracking jokes. Everyone's still going, you know, so it's like this notion that you come to Christ and you can't have no fun. You can't
And that's
dance.
the thing.
You can't do this. No,
you can't do this. You can't do that. You don't have to become all super spiritual, spooky, and weird to come to God.
No.
You know, I had it in my mind when I was in college, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have a little fun, and then I'm going to come to God when I'm about 35, 36. That was
stop
like
having fun.
I
want to get it out of my system, because I won't be doing none of this stuff.
Exactly. But the reality is this, and this is what I've told my children: all you're doing is giving up sin. I mean, that's it. You still
not giving
can
up
have
life.
fun.
You're not giving up life. You know,
You still having a great time. You know, me and you and I, we still talk about basketball. We talk about Bron. We talk about, you know, all the different things. MJ, Kareem, who's the best? I get on Facebook now. I'll share thoughts on basketball, and we even though we're not of this world, you and I, we carry a lot of a burden, if you will. In regards to racial reconciliation, which you're actively involved in from a ministry standpoint, in a sense, I'm involved in my corporate life in helping, you know, bring about change in that area. But those are all things that, you know, that we're passionate about, and it just so happen you and I share similar passions, which also has helped our relationship.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of those things. Number one passion. We've already talked about the basketball, and Hollis and I will get on the phone. We'll have a conversation about basketball forever. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about which I can personally say has benefited me most in my walk, has been the impact it's had on my marriage. And I can, as an outsider, look at your marriage and your family and say that I know it's a big part of that. So for me, I can honestly say that I probably would not be married right now. My wife and I just celebrated 18 years back in October.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Yeah, 18 years
Now you gonna
doing
make
it
me do some
big.
math, man.
And I met her because of being in the church. We grew, had the awesome opportunity to move to Jamaica and do ministry. So my wife, for those who don't know, my wife, her mother's from Trinidad, her father's from Jamaica. And through basketball at Bethel, I started traveling to Jamaica while I was in college. And one of my non-negotiables in terms of who I would marry, I need to marry somebody who was going to be willing to move to Jamaica within 3 to 5 years of us meeting. And I ended up meeting my wife, Nicole, 3 days after I moved out to Massachusetts.
That's hot.
And after we got married, 2 years later after we got married, we moved to Jamaica. And so when I think about me, from Michigan City, and you know what it's like growing up in Michigan City, which is one of the coolest small towns in America.
Man, come on, man.
Small cities in America, growing, especially back in the days.
Yes, sir.
But to then wake up every morning in Kingston, Jamaica, and then be able to drive a couple hours to Montego Bay or Ocho Rios, kick it on the beach. That wouldn't have been made possible if not for my walk with Christ, because it was actually ministry that first took me to Jamaica. It was ministry that introduced me to my wife, and it was ministry that we quit our jobs, sold our vehicles, and moved to Jamaica with just enough money for 3 months.
Right.
And then 14 months later, God was still providing for us.
Right.
And not only were we able to experience that time in Jamaica from a while we live in Jamaica standpoint, but more importantly, it took our marriage to a whole nother level, because we were in Jamaica, although she had family in some of the places, there were times when we were struggling, there were times when we were in this new culture, and it was just her and I, and a couple other people. It really brought us closer together. And it reminded me of when I first got back to Michigan City, I would observe you and your wife Mary and say to myself, I hope that I'm able to find someone who I'm going to be able to be in ministry with. So tell me a little about, you already talked about how your faith connected you to, but how has it really impacted as far as your marriage, your family? I know I've had the pleasure to meet your kids. I call them nephew and nieces now.
Yeah,
so tell us about your family, because I
doubt.
think that's super important.
Yeah, I mean, there's no area that's not touched by my faith.
As well as it should
you
be.
know,
I like
faith-
that.
Yeah, faith has, my faith in God and what God has done, it's touched every fabric and every area of my life. And without it, I know I wouldn't be here now. I know we'll talk next episode about careers and things like that, but I wouldn't be in the career that I have. I would not have the children. I got a daughter that just published a book, and she's getting ready to go to law school. She literally just got a video from Georgetown. They sent her an acceptance video verbally asking her to come there, and many other schools, and so. Kids, that are playing college sports and healthy and love the Lord, most importantly, all three, So faith has played such a big role. My wife and I, we've been together for, 26 years. This would be the 26th year of us being together. And so, it's been a long journey. And, we've often told people that what's helped us the most is, and I'm showing it kind of on camera, as I go after God, I'm kind of showing my hand as I go up, and she goes after God as she goes up. We meet up top, and it's like a little triangle, if you will, a pyramid, if you will, and that's kind of always been like, the thing that has helped us the most is that we've always had a checking system, and our checking system has always been the Word. So so long as you have that. Now, when that checking system is no longer there, and you're just doing things under your own strength, trouble, and hey, and I'm not going to sit up here and say every day has been perfect, every day has been, without arguments. I mean, the thing about it is people don't realize the thing about a marriage is that you feel that person is worth you going through some tough times
Preach.
together.
Preach.
You know, and so that's the thing that, you know, my wife and I would never sit up and say, hey, we everything's just so perfect and everything. No, I mean, I'm sure I get on her nerves. I'm sure she get on mine. And I mean, just keeping it real with y'all, we gonna always be authentic on the show. But the
marriage.
thing is,
that's marriage.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is, she's worth it to me, and I feel like that I'm probably worth it for her. And
doubt.
you know, so faith. Without faith, man, I wouldn't have been. You know, my priorities would have been different. You know, my faith calls me to put being a father as a priority, as the number one priority over basketball, over everything, you know, and trying to be excellent in that, and actually studying. I actually I read different books on how to be a good dad. And I'm still, you know, not getting that right, but I mean the effort and the grace from God is, you know, has been there, and so, you know, faith has impacted every area, all of my decision making. So when you ask that question, I'm trying to think of an area where, you know, faith is not impacted, and it does. And I can say this honestly, you know, I'm the same person that, even though I'm a new creature, I'm still Hollis Edwards, and I'm the same person that my counselor at Elston High School told me that I shouldn't even look at going to college.
Wow.
I'm that same person.
Wow.
But yet here I am, you know, multiple degrees later, grad degrees later, you know, career, things of that nature, healthy family, healthy in my body, mind. It's because of the faith in God and how He has taken my life, what I thought was already good, and took it to new heights. And I'm looking forward to the next level.
Hopefully that counselor, you know, they can check out this episode and be like, oh, that Hollis Edwards, he show surprised me. Like, yeah, look at my boy
no
now.
Doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. And you know who you are if she's still around.
Yeah, so we're going to conclude with just talking about how we've been able to sharpen one another. I know, I think it's important, anyone who is in the faith, anyone who's in marriage, anyone who's doing anything long term, one of the easiest or earliest things we find out is you can't do it by yourself. And I know I have really appreciated you, benefited from you. So I want the viewer and the audience to know just how many, like, we reconnected in '99, but then we got reconnected years later. And I remember maybe a few years back, maybe 3 years back, where it seemed like we were talking one particular summer. I guarantee, no exaggeration, we talked probably about 4 or 5 times a week. You know, remember that summer I was talking about, and it was just like, and it was like for hours, and my wife would just be so amazed. But my wife was not only amazed, and she says this to this day, because normally. When I talk to Hollis, I'll have you on speakerphone for the first 5 or 10 minutes. I'm normally in the living room when you call, and then I'll come down to the office. But my wife, she'll overhear some of that stuff where we're talking about basketball, or if we're having a production meeting, or whatever it may be. Yeah. And even to this day, she says she really enjoys just our relationship and our banter and the way we joke around. Because here's the flip side. Even if we're talking about hours upon hours, some wives have husbands where their husbands are doing some other stuff, hours upon hours.
Right.
You know, doing dirt.
That's true.
Or talking to someone they shouldn't be talking to, or just not coming to the crib, not wanting to come home. Right. So she appreciates the fact that she knows I got a brother, and there's several other brothers I have. But this particular summer and these last couple of years, you know, we really been putting in some work in terms of just sharpening one another, just encouraging one another, building. No doubt. It was out of those conversations that the idea for the podcast came. We were like, you know what? we need to record some of this stuff because these jokes we be telling or these stories we be telling are hilarious, but they're informative and they sharpen us. And so part of what we're doing right now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have scripts.
Right.
We haven't tried to intellectualize this podcast. What we're simply doing is Hollis and I are doing what we've been doing for the last decade, it seems like, and that's we just chopping it up. We just chopping it up.
Y'all get to be a part.
And y'all get to be a part of it. And after episode 3, you're going to really get to be a part of it when we start to have live guests. And we're going to be able to interact with you all via the chat. Because what we're doing these first 3 episodes, we're just setting the groundwork. Episode 1 was all about the backstory. This particular episode, Pastor Rock, was all about our faith. And then our next episode is going to be from ballers to balling. And it's going to be about how we utilize the principles that we learn on the court and how it's taken us into great heights, or at least effective places in terms of our work and career. And so, Hollis, I want you just to close us out. Any parting notes, any parting words of wisdom to our viewers? What we did not want to do was have this be an evangelistic tool by its in and of itself, although we're hoping some will be blessed by this. We want to be to tell our story and to make ourselves real to the people. That as believers, you don't have to be holier than thou and untouchable. That we're real. We're still Hollis and Theo. So you close us out in terms of what do you really hope that our viewing audience have gotten and can get out of this particular episode?
Yeah, I just think a couple of things. I mean, just the importance of faith in God and the importance of all the benefits. Membership has its privileges, right? So all the benefits of everything that you get from the Lord, and you don't stop living. You really begin to live.
Word. That's good.
And so, and then also, the importance of marriage. Now I know, marriages fail, and I know that. Sometimes people are connected and it just don't work out, and we all know what the word says about those things, and Theo and I have similar beliefs on that. But if you do have a marriage and and you guys are both trying to live for God, then it's there's definitely room for God to intervene, and so I just think that what I would like for people to leave this conversation with is just maybe kind of just looking at themselves, if they were kind of thinking about it. If you are fans or supporters of myself or Theo, and you maybe wondered, maybe you've seen some successes in our lives if you know us closely, or maybe because Theo and I, we don't. If you do follow us on social media, we don't get on there and show our business or brag or anything. We just, but we have had some successes that God has blessed us with, and maybe you want to know about how we're getting those things, or some of the details on how we look at our wives and our marriages and things like that. So anything that we've shared, nothing in particular or specific, but just anything that we've shared that could bless you, that can help you, that can encourage you, please, by all means, just we hope that it does so. So. That's kind of how I would summarize that as far as what I would like for people to get from it, and hopefully it was enjoyable too.
Definitely. So this has been episode 2 of We Call Next, Pastor Rock, where we shared our faith. Check out the video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Facebook channel. Follow us on Twitter.
Hit them buttons.
Hit those likes.
We Call Next One. I think it's We Call Next One on Twitter.
Yes. Shout out to the niece, Nina Simone, for hooking that up for us. And so we hope y'all enjoyed the show. We look forward to episode 3 when we talk about our working career, to just once again show how we allow basketball and those principles to live on outside the court. And I think that's important for every athlete. And so we just want to sign off. Hope y'all enjoyed the show. Take care. God bless. Peace.
God bless y'all. All right.